interest in remixing the greatest story of the Hollywood myth, Rebel Without a Cause. And Rebel Without a Cause is almost like a biblical story for us. So much of our culture comes out of that film, those actors and actresses, the stories all around it. And we encouraged James to run with it, and we wanted to be involved with the presentation in Los Angeles. I think that the result was pretty remarkable, and it is really a merger of art culture and film culture, contemporary art performance, contemporary film, remixing this film classic in a language that connects with the history of contemporary performance art and touches on contemporary architecture, sculpture, painting. It is a fascinating example of collage culture being merged with film.
And yeah, thanks to MOCA for sponsoring this and helping us put this along, and JF Chen for this space. We had a lot of ideas about where this would be presented and how, and now that we found this space, I think it's kind of the best incarnation, because it some of the earlier ideas had the different pieces and the different works sort of isolated from each other, and here in this space, I think there's just one more level of collage, and they really become more integrated. So I'm very grateful that it worked out this way. Basically, I want to hear from me. We have like the best artists, contemporary artists alive here, so I'll just talk about how some of the early ideas came about. I played James Dean in like 2000. I'd been a James Dean fan. He'd been a model for me and as an actor, and so I played him in a biopic, and it was a very, it was a traditional biopic. It was an earnest portrayal of James Dean's life. And after that, I'd read all the biographies, and then after that, a book came out about the making of Rebel Without a Cause, and I'd heard a lot of the stories before. When I played James Dean, I talked to everybody that was alive that had been his friend, including Dennis Hopper and all the cast of Rebel Without a Cause that was alive, and Martin Landau, everyone that knew him. And so I knew a lot of the stories, but once I saw them all together, I thought, well, there's so much more in this film, and also behind the scenes of this film, that hasn't been touched on. In a lot of ways, over the past 50 years, this film has been mined in superficial ways. You can see storylines or certain forms of teen rebellion, echoing in every new generation's movies, but that there was still something underneath that hadn't been mined, and so that led to the early idea of just, conventional idea of just making a film about the making of Rebel Without a Cause. But I quickly thought, well, that'll be a little too precious. That will, the original film really struck a chord. It was something that was new, and that if I just made another movie about the movie, it wouldn't have any of the rawness of the original piece. And so that led to this idea of breaking it up into sections, the behind-the-scenes, scenes that were never shot, the idea of the automobile and the motorcycle as kind of abstract representations of James Dean, or kind of ideas of masculinity at the time.
Hi, I'm Aaron Young. So I think, James pretty much approached everyone in the same way, is that putting together or establishing some kind of maybe uncohesive film. and we were all supposed to put it together, and then this thing has expanded a lot over time. So when he approached me about it, we kind of sat down at the table, and I think that we banged out pretty much every single idea within about 15 minutes. And I was really excited because yes, I was going to film and everything. So it was exciting for me to get behind something like a production team, special effects, everything like that I can kind of live vicariously through the life that I had thought that I was going to have when I was younger. And when I do approach these type of things, I try to come up with the craziest idea, and then we have to scale it back and back and back. But I didn't really have to do that this time. I kind of got away with everything that I wanted. And I think I'm really happy and I'm really proud of what this whole thing has ended up being. So I want to thank James, I want to thank everybody at MOCA and all the artists. I hope you guys enjoy it.
Hey. So about a year ago, I guess. Harmony. About a year ago, James called me up and said he had this idea of reinterpreting Rebel. I think like when I was a kid, like 15 years ago or something, I was trying to make a movie. It's kind of like a provocation. I wanted to make like the greatest comedy ever, and I thought like the essence of comedy was like, or screwball comedy was like, you know, guy slips on a banana peel, cracks his head, and it's funny. The violence, the repetition of the violence is hilarious. So I made these videos where I would go out and provoke people to beat me up. Basically on the street I would have a camera crew follow, and I would just say or do whatever it took to have people beat me up. And like I wanted it to be a feature film that would like play in shopping malls. And I didn't get very close, but I did like 9 or 10 fights. You know, I wanted to fight every demographic. But it was really hard, because I forgot how long a fight took, like an average fight. So if it was 90 minutes, I had to do something like, you know, 40, 50 of them. I made it to like 9, and then I was, like, went to the hospital, got arrested a bunch. People were talking about institutionalizing me. I knew it was funny, but I just, I didn't have the wherewithal to finish the film. So I abandoned it. And I guess James called me and said he was doing this. He wanted to know if I could do something like that for the fight scene, the iconic fight scene in Rebel. But I couldn't go back to that place again. It was pretty brutal. So then we started thinking about, I like the idea of reinterpreting the violence in some special way. And then I had heard about these like girl gangs that had, in LA, that had become nudists and had like saved them. And so we sought them out, Crips and Bloods in this nudist colony. And I kind of wrote it for them. And kind of meshed it into this thing. It's, yeah, that's all. Turned out pretty good.
James first approached me about the piece in my email, and I was actually in Cappadocia, Turkey, and sleeping in a cave. So and I had no access to the film, and so a lot of the imagining of the first half was done with no access to the film in this like really isolated environment. And so like this like fantastic version of what I remembered seeing the film. And it sort of developed from that. You know, the first half was very regimented and planned. Then I had Jenna Malone and Devendra Benhart come read the film. And originally Devendra was going to be Natalie Wood. No, sorry, Jenna was going to be Natalie Wood. And then I had Jenna Malone come read, and she just, like, I had her do Plato, just one line, and I was blown away. She totally nailed it. And so I switched it around, and I think it really, really came through. All the gender confusion, especially in the film, when you're hearing, I think the very 1960s thing, you seeing one thing and hearing another thing, and the tensions that created of that era, the tensions of that, and the process was just insane. I did, it's over 10,000 hand-drawn pictures. When you try and meet spontaneous ideas, it's really, really a hard thing to do. You do a scene, you do it over. But, I mean, it's been 3 months of 16 hours a day. Everyone enjoys it.